Hi, I'm Chris from Airwindows, and as is my custom, I like to have a plugin for folks, and I have a plugin for you today. It's going to be a little different this time on account of the ways I'm going to demonstrate it. Because you know how I have this tendency to fall back into this zone where we're listening to this tune. Well, our plugin today is BrightAmbience2, and this is something that I've been working on for a bit. There's a lot of things I needed to get together for it. I see it as a replacement for the original BrightAmbience. As you might know, that is one that's built off of an enormous sequence of really short slapback delays. So what BrightAmbience2 does is it is using a different method for the sequence. It's using a concept called superprimes, where basically, here I'll show you. We have this series of echoes here. Here I'll put it onto drums. You can also notice that this is a dual mono echo, but not quite, because if you had just center, it does something interesting. It is a slightly spread out center image. It's doing a somewhat of a stereo effect. And then of course if we throw in the other channels there, you get the full width of the delay effect. Now this is different from the original BrightAmbience in a couple of ways. One, it's using a different sequence for the delay. The delay will be longer if you go to like 44.1K because it's based on sample rate directly. So it needs to function on the raw sample rate, whatever that is, which might mean that if you're at like 192K, this isn't going to work super well for you. But this is being monitored at 96, and you can get the same effect on 44.1K by going to about half the length. And it does seem to last long enough to do some of its stuff. So you got length of 0 is just an immediate slapback, and start offsets the slapback. So here is dry wet control. And since it's BrightAmbience, this is a slapback that is exactly a pure digital delay. We can also do a feedback, and that does what you would imagine. But listen to what happens when we start to include some length. It starts to sound, first of all, it's cutting back on some of that feedback because it can't feedback as effectively in the reverb zone, but it's also darkening a bit. Here, let's kill the feedback and hear what it sounds like now. And this is our delay tab. And as we keep increasing length, we'll get a change in tone. And it'll start thickening up. This could be a sort of crazy dubby kind of effect. And it's still a bright ambience, it's still a bright echo. And then as we go farther, we start to get into that crazy kind of 80s zone where it's more of the original BrightAmbience behavior, but it'll stretch longer. there's your kind of 80s craziness effect. And if you've got that on the full mix or something like that, it adds a real sort of bright ambience, literally is what it's named and what it is. Now you might not want to do that on a full mix, or stretch the length out. Interesting thing is start and length are somewhat interlinked, and that start is going to delay the onset of it, and length continues beyond that. But if you stretch the length out so far, you lose the ability to delay start because it starts shortening up to make room for what you're trying to do. So you can't break this by turning it up too much. You just wind up getting full length at all times. You can hear it does an interesting kind of ambience effect. And again, it's very bright. You can do the crazy dubby kind of stuff. Oh, there is also one other interesting effect. It starts to act almost like a time delay. Here, I'll go to the drums again for that. And no feedback. I've got some folks who use my plugins that are interested in like modern technologies like drum and bass and whatever, so you might be able to get some kind of horrible results out of this. It's going to produce horrible glitches. And you might not find it really controllable, but you can certainly do some damage here. But I mean, only if you're in the 80s will you be wanting to do this on drums. I'm just doing it so that you can hear what it does. And again, start is like your delay before the reverb B stuff starts happening, and the length is how long this extends. But it is almost more relevant to something like a voice effect. So I can demonstrate a little bit of this here. As you can see, here is BrightAmbience doing a really aggressive bright effect on my voice. I'm running a plugin called Left to Mono because this is coming in channel 1. And if I turn the feedback down, it'll start darkening stuff up a little bit to the point where it's like a, I don't know, rockabilly effect or something like that. It's that kind of slapback. Feedback is weird because it's going to sit on some of the lower frequency stuff and brighten the echoes. But it's going to brighten the echoes a little bit if the feedback is short. But what gets interesting is when we start throwing the actual algorithm of BrightAmbience in here, because this is actually, it's distracting to talk into. Although I am getting a very good delay effect going on here. For 96K, that's a pretty good length. But if we start doing the length effect, then we start getting this sound effect going on that is much more of a, well, that's a pretty deep echo there. I can probably slow it down a little bit. And now we're getting the ambience effect and slowing it down even further until we're no longer having that effect, but we're still having the BrightAmbience effect. And I can speed it up a little bit and then slow down the delay even more. And we start getting into this kind of Lexicon 80s vocal vibe thing going on, where it is a bright ambience. I can also kill the feedback for an even cleaner and brighter effect, because basically how the feedback works is it's filling stuff in, but as it regenerates, it darkens a little bit, especially if it's not at full crank, just to keep from having a nasty high frequency test going on. So you throw in a little feedback to have it start sounding more like an actual space, and then you extend it out here to the point where it starts becoming rather unnatural, and then you have a real chamber kind of effect going on, which we can stick right on the output of things. I don't need to do dry wet here because my dry is also coming in through the recording technology. Like it's going straight into OBS, that's what my dry is. And here we have a BrightAmbience Lexicon effect for ballad singers or whatever you might choose to do. And that's clearly much too long and much too bright. You wouldn't necessarily have it be this loud. I can turn it down a bit, but hey, we're having fun with it. But then what you do is you start shortening it up and putting on a little bit of a delay there and getting it to where now we have a pop vocal kind of effect. Again, it's louder than you'd normally have it, but I can tighten that up a little bit and I can make it react faster. But this is sort of your glossy pop vocal effect, and it's going to really jump on all of your little detail noises. I can even make it feedback and get a little more color in there. But bottom line is this is going to be almost better at something like voices than certainly full mixes, because it's this bright ambience effect, but it's also a sort of magical fairy dust effect where you can exaggerate things in certain ways and have it be get into whatever you're doing as far as making that bright, sparkly sound on your lead vocal. And I'm not necessarily going to sing for you. I don't know how to sing very good. But it sure is sparkling things up a lot. And then if I mute that, you can immediately tell it's a lovely voice sound. It's a decent microphone. I recommend these Roswell ones. They're really cool. I'm very happy with them. But then you turn on the BrightAmbience and all of a sudden we're in 1980s pop stardom land. And everything is brighter and more spectacular. And again, I've got the feedback turned way up. And if I turn the length down, I can get into a zone where the echo effect starts happening. And then if I delay it, I can get into a sort of rockabilly effect where I've got a slapback going on. And it's a very aggressive, like if I have the feedback turned up that much, I'm going to get this bright sparkle going on. And when you do too much of that, it starts getting unnatural. But yeah, I mean, if you were going to be doing some kind of lead vocal and you wanted to have an echo effect on it, this is an interesting choice for your echo effect because it's going to do that bright ambience spreading of the sound It's almost like as if you were running it through a reverb and all-pass filter, but it's not an all-pass filter. It's a cluster of little echoes that take place on prime number boundaries. So the end result doesn't favor any particular frequency all the way up into the super highs. And this is a deeply unnatural sound. But then if you pad it a little bit, here I've got my word length gain going on here, so I can pad the total output of everything. And then I've got a voice thing that is a very bright, shiny echo. And then I can expand it outwards to be more like an ambience, a space that I can be singing in or talking in. And all told, this is probably going to be useful for certain kinds of probably voice effects. Now, one thing about it is, like I'm doing with this, I'm going into only one channel, so I'm running the plugin left to mono because this is a only stereo effect. Like if you do not have the stereo happening, what you're going to get is the effect happening only on one side or the other side, depending upon if I choose that, because it is strictly a dual mono effect. And here, let's space it out nicely and turn it down some. And there you go. Now I've got a super bright but heavily gated chamber effect going on this. And it's probably too loud, but I can make it more platey by shortening the pre-delay. And then I can make it more reasonable by tightening it up a little bit, and I can make it a little more natural by throwing in feedback which darkens the output. And if we have this, it's probably going to be a half-decent voice effect. Or we can go back to our previous wackiness and start throwing that kind of craziness on it as well. And these are all things you can have. But that said, and now I've got two BrightAmbiences in series. Both of these are engaged. So, from the deepest depths of space, I will switch over to, let's see, OBS, and we vanish away into the wackiness. And on that note, I hope you enjoy BrightAmbience2. It's a pretty weird effect, but those are always fun. And on that note, I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.